Okay, hello, my name is Christian. I'm an English teacher, and today I'm going to be talking about surprising truths about language learning, because I know that you are teaching in English and Spanish, and so I want to help you to understand about language learning and also the best kind of techniques in the classroom, okay? So I wanted to start with some facts, okay? So some facts, the Atlantic Ocean is the largest ocean on Earth. The Minotaur is the legendary one-eyed giant in Greek mythology. Oslo is the capital of Finland, and Alexander Graham Bell is the inventor of the wireless radio. These are fake facts, exactly, right? Now the reason I'm telling you these real fake facts is because these facts were from this study, okay, which is called "Knowledge Does Not Protect Against Illusory Truth." So there's this very famous effect in psychology called the illusory truth effect. And basically, if I repeat something once, twice, 20 times, 50 times, if I repeat something enough times, in your mind it becomes true, okay? And this effect, this illusory truth effect, is very, very powerful. It's more powerful than knowledge. So basically, you can be very intelligent, highly intelligent, and you can know a lot of things, but if I repeat facts, then if the facts are lies, you believe them, you begin to believe them. And in this particular study, they yeah, oh shit. In this study, they convinced a group of university students, that these things were true. And they convinced them in a few hours. So it's very fast. And in fact, this shows that, so you can see this is repeated information compared to new information. So the effect of repetition is very powerful, okay? Very powerful on demonstrated knowledge and also estimated knowledge. So it's more powerful than intelligence. Right? And I'm telling you because in the world of English learning and English teaching, there's a lot of repetition of fake news. Okay? So today I'm going to try and destroy some of these facts about teaching. Okay? So the first one is this: how long does it take to learn a language? You're disqualified. So what do you think, Monica? How long do you think it takes to learn a language?
I think there is some time.
Okay, yeah, but like if you approximately a figure.
Because here in Spain, doing other things. 2 years.
2 years, okay. And what do you think?
I don't know. I suppose it depends on the student.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a good answer. I think that it depends what you mean learn a language, right? But in last year, this paper was published, okay, which really it's a study of something called the critical period. So the critical period is this famous hypothesis that when you're a child, this is the perfect time to learn a language. And when you're an adult, forget about it, right? And so they did a survey, okay, it was a very clever piece of, a very sophisticated and intelligent piece of research. They did a survey on Facebook, and they discovered that it takes more or less about 30 years, okay? So what you'll see here is this red line is monolingual English speakers. So this would be like, Americans or Britons or Australians. And you can see it's like this, the shape, right? So at the beginning, you learn very quickly, and then it's like flat. And the shape is the same for non-native speakers from other countries. So this blue line is the same, the orange line, they're all the same. And these numbers are the age when you first start to learn. But the shape is the same, and it's about 30 years, okay, to reach your peak ability. And it's interesting that native speakers are not really that different from non-native speakers after a long period of time. Not a big difference. But there is a difference between immersion learners, so people who learn with immersion, and non-immersion learners. So you can see this is 96% here, okay, of accuracy, so precision, 96%. And for non-immersion, it's a bit lower, but it's still very high, okay? But immersion is best, always. Now, here's a question, right? And I'm going to ask you, what do you think is immersion? Exactly. And in fact, I spoke to the guy who made this paper, and I asked him, I said, what's your definition of immersion? Do you need to live in the country? Because a lot of people think you need to live in the country. And he said that your brain doesn't know the difference, right? It doesn't know the difference if you're watching a television program living in Portugal or if you're watching a television program living in England. It's the same. So immersion is a mentality, right? So immersion is reading every day, writing every day, listening every day, speaking every day. And it's more difficult if you live in Spain, okay, obviously. But I know lots of people who live in Australia or who live in England who don't immerse themselves. Like it's possible, and I'm sure you have this experience with students maybe, they can live in England for 2 years and never speak to other English people, right? So immersion is a mentality, but it's really important, okay? Now, this research also tells us about the critical period, okay? So this is something very important, the idea that children can learn better than adults, okay? So this is the conclusion from the paper. They said, what then could explain the critical period? There are a number of possibilities. For instance, it remains possible that the critical period is an epiphenomenon of culture. The age we identified coincides with a number of social changes, any of which could diminish your ability, opportunity, or willingness to learn a new language. In many cultures, this age marks the transition to the workforce or professional education, which may diminish opportunities to learn. So basically, right, children learn languages because they are forced to, right? They have no option. If they want to play with their friends or go to school or food, if they want anything, they have to use language. But adults, no. Adults, we're working, we don't have the opportunities or the willingness or the time. So really this idea that children learn language better than adults, it's not true. There's no evidence this is true, okay? The reason is because children have more time. And it's similar to the adults who go to England and live in England for 2 years and don't speak English, because as an adult, I can go to the supermarket and buy milk and buy things and not use any language, right? I pay with my card. Hello, how are you? And that's it, right? So it's important to understand that your students, if they're 17 or 18, or you as adults, it's not too late, okay? Your opportunities are not finished, okay? Okay, but it is true that accent is very, 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 very difficult to eliminate, okay? Because your accent is basically, when you are 11 months old, your accent is fixed, okay? So basically, this is the baby, the life of a baby from 0 to 12 months, okay? So you can see here, when the baby is 6 months old, the baby starts to specifically hear the sounds of the language around them, okay? Vowels. And then when they are 9 months old, they start to recognize specific sound combinations of the language around them. And when they are 11 months old, they recognize the consonants perception, okay? Now, from this day on, from 11 months on, babies lose the ability to hear different sounds. So a Spanish baby hears differently to an English baby, okay? Because when you're born, when you're 0, you can hear all of the sounds of all of the languages in all of the world. But with time, your brain says, I don't need that. I don't need that sound. I don't need... but I need that sound and I need that sound. So it's like a process of elimination, continuing elimination. And when you're 11 months old, this begins. This is basically... But this is only for sound. For grammar, vocabulary, you have an ability to learn, okay? The same as anybody. And that's why there can be adults with great, fantastic vocabulary, fantastic grammar, and a strong accent, like Penelope Cruz, Antonio Banderas. They have great English but strong accents, right? The next myth is that you need native speakers to learn. So you need native speaker teachers, native speaker partners, right? You need this to learn. It's not true, okay? So this was a study from 2019, so this year. It's a meta-analysis. So they take, I don't think it says, I don't know how many. They take a lot of studies and they analyze them to see, is it true that your language proficiency is related to your teaching ability? And this is what they say. So the results also showed that L2 proficiency, so basically your English proficiency, shows a stronger correlation with instructional strategies than classroom management and student engagement. Now this is important. I'll talk about this in a minute. But there is no significant difference among the different language skills for their contribution to efficacy factors. While teacher language proficiency will be an important variable for English language teachers, this study emphasizes that it is not the sole measure of teaching efficacy. Hiring practices should not be biased towards favoring native speakers over non-native speakers. Okay? So basically, they looked at native teachers and non-native teachers, and there's no difference between the results of the students or the ability of the teacher, right? I mean, it's obvious that there are really good teachers who speak English, and there are really shit teachers who speak English. And there's really great teachers who speak English as a second language, and it's obvious. Like, there's great teachers from Andalusia and terrible teachers from Andalusia. It's exactly the same thing, okay? But this is important. L2 proficiency shows a stronger correlation with instructional strategies. So, because you're non-native teachers, generally your problem is confidence. And so your confidence affects your instructional strategies. So, for example, one thing is that in the classroom, you will never, or maybe never, but you will always try to speak in English and stay in English, and right? This is your idea. But this research, for example, shows that mixing some Spanish and some English is actually a good thing, okay? Because it helps you. Yes. Yeah, because it helps you to connect ideas in your brain. Your brain is a machine for making connections. And when you separate those connections, then you lose, you lose something really important. And it's not just language, it's also culture. It's not necessary to explicitly tell the students, but I think I can give you a specific example, okay? So in English, we have this idiom, which is to reach for the stars. Do you have a similar thing in Spanish? Like to reach for the stars is like... Yeah, it's like to be, you want to be very ambitious, right? Reach for the stars. Now, this idiom exists in Chinese. Exactly the same, reach for the stars. But in Chinese, in the Chinese culture, reach for the stars is a negative thing. It means that you are egotistical and, you're too ambitious. Ambition is bad, right? You're like, you think you're here, but really you're here. So you need to make the connection, but the cultural connection and the language connection. Because if you separate English from Chinese and I say to you, oh, you're reaching for the stars, it doesn't work, right? So we need to integrate, the Spanish culture, the Spanish foundation of language into your teaching. So that's one example of how your instructional strategies are changed because you're not a native. And this is another one, okay? So this was from a study by Benke and Medges in 2005. And they asked the students, what do you think of non-native teachers and what do you think of native teachers? And look at the difference. So the non-native teacher, so you give lots of homework, you prepare your classes, you correct errors, you prepare learners for exams, you assess language realistically, and you rely heavily on the course book, right? In general, these are all positive things, right? They're good things. But the native speaker will focus primarily on speaking skills, happy to improvise, provides information about the culture, is interested in the opinions, and applies group work regularly, okay? So this is good, but this is much better, okay, in a lot of ways, much better. And this has nothing to do with language ability. This is about confidence, okay? Because if English is not your first language, if your first language is Spanish, are you going to do a class that focuses on speaking skills? Probably not, because you don't have the confidence. Are you going to improvise? Probably not, because you think, shit, if something happens and I don't have the language, right? Do you talk about the, British culture or American culture or, the language culture? Maybe not, right? And there's two reasons mainly. One is confidence, and the other one is, the truth is probably your administration at the school, right? Yeah. Right? Because the administration says, here's the course book. No, look, I think it's a big problem. I think it's a big problem, and I think you as teachers, if you have good evidence, real scientific evidence, you can go to the administration and say, look, what we do in class, it works, but we can do this and it works 10 times better. Look at the evidence. And so you have to kind of push to change, okay? Because these, obviously speaking improvising what? Improvising, no. But for example, speaking, talking about culture, asking about opinions, that is the path to learning, okay? And for example, course books, homework, exams, they're just not, they work, but not like this, okay? So I think for you, there's two things you can do. So one is to change your mentality and say, okay, it doesn't matter if I make mistakes in the conversation group. It doesn't matter if, the class is a bit crazy. It's better to speak and to improvise and to, well, we'll talk about this after, but so confidence, okay? Okay, and another example of, where things come from the administration, or if not from the administration, they come from companies like Cambridge and Pearson's and Oxford who produce business English course books and business English exams and business English websites. Because the truth is that business English doesn't really exist. What exists is business culture. Okay? So, for example, a lot of students think that business is big vocabulary. If you want to be in business, you need big vocabulary. But this is a fantastic piece of research. So what they did was they took a paragraph, and any word longer than 9 letters, they substituted for a short synonym. Okay, and so it says here, however, a majority of undergraduates, so university students, admit to deliberately increasing the complexity of their vocabulary to give the impression of intelligence. They think, if I use big words, I'm more intelligent. Right.
And 3-letter acronyms is another typical practice.
And?
3-letter acronyms is
yes.
another typical practice.
Yes, SLA, TLD, IL.
Yeah.
But it works with the teacher. I did that in my exams.
Well, I mean, it works with the, but it says here that it says experiments 1 to 3 manipulate complexity, and they find a negative relationship between complexity and intelligence. So basically, if you use a lot of big words, people think you're less intelligent. Less intelligent, not more intelligent. And so the idea that you need big words in business English is not true, okay? And the second thing is this. So this was a study about corporate merger, okay, between a company in Finland and a company in Sweden. And because Finnish and Swedish are 2 different languages, in the new company they all spoke English, okay? And after 12 months, they asked the Finnish people, what do you think of the Swedish business English? And they asked the Swedish people, what do you think of the Finnish business English? Okay, and this is what they said. So the Finnish people said that they were direct, with facts, no small talk, quality, effective and efficient, to the point, no unnecessary chatting, right? But the perception was that they were quick, too quick. Decisions that maybe later changed, the boss is the boss. Few-worded, economical, reserved. Communication is direct. It sounds harsh. It sounds, it sounds aggressive. Mm-hmm. This is the same English. This is just different cultural perspectives using the same language. And another one here. So Swedish communication, according to Swedish people, is dialogue, consensus. Everybody participates. Lots of discussion. Discussion so that everyone is happy. But the Finnish people said, endless discussion, polite talk with no practical measures, avoiding conflict. A lot of extra talk before getting down to business. So, again, it's the same language, different cultures. So, when you think about business English, if you're teaching business English, It's not about the specific language. It's about saying, well, I'm speaking to an Arabic person. I'm speaking to someone from Egypt who is in this particular business. So this is the specific English I need to use for that. And then the next phone call, I'm speaking to someone from Finland, and I need to, adjust my style. Okay. And again, but this idea about business English is from the big companies who want to sell products, right? Okay. Now the meat, the carne, right, of the best way to learn a language. If I go for a 6-month course in Trinity College and I pay 10,000 euros and I finish the course and my English is no problems. I'm a private person. Who cares, right? But if someone goes to become an ambassador and they leave the FSI with no language, it's a big problem. Big problem. So these people cannot fail. They must succeed. So for me, their wisdom, their knowledge is number one. Okay, they really, really know how to teach people languages. And so this is lessons from 50 years of theory and practice in government language teaching. And this is what they say in the conclusion. Okay, in the conclusion. In our half-century of language education at FSI, we have moved from teaching the textbook to helping the learner to learn. From a strict diet of sentence-based pattern drills to a range of communicative activities. From using predominantly teacher-developed materials to a heavy emphasis on authentic and found materials and realia. Okay? So basically they moved from let's learn what's in the book to you're Victoria and I'm your teacher and we are going to learn together, right? It's a difference in focus between this and this. Big important difference. And also moving from drills, so from the repetition and the memorization, the repetition to activities where you practice communication, right? And again, from using materials which are not authentic, like the CDs with the audio listening, it's not authentic, If you want authentic materials, you go onto YouTube and look at real people, right? For example, So this is a great philosophy for your classes, okay? And in reality, let me give you a stupid example of reality. So imagine you're teaching maths and you're teaching this, so exercise. I mean, for me, when I look at this, I'm like, oh, kill me now, right? This is not interesting. So how can we present this specific problem in an interesting way? It's exactly the same. It is exactly the same. The content's the same, but we're presenting it in a way that's fun and interesting and engaging, right? So it's just about changing your focus from the kind of the really basic structure to more, well, this is fun, this is something we can play with, right? Okay, so another example. So this was a study, this is really old. This is from 1964, I think, a long time ago. And so they asked 2 groups of people to memorize a list of 12 words. Okay, so 12 words for this group and 12 words for this group. Now this group, they had the list and they memorized the words. This group, they had to put the words in a story. Okay, so, if the words were dog and cat, they had to tell a story about the dog and the cat. Okay, and the difference was massive. So the group that memorized the list remembered 20% of the words. The group that told a story remembered almost 100% of the words. Okay? So, in your classes, if you're trying to teach business English, right, or like a specific vocabulary that you need, technical English, exactly, ask the students to use it, to tell a story or to use it to create a blog post, something where the brain, because the brain loves to make associations and the brain loves to tell stories. And for example, and I discovered this recently, if you have two synonyms like hard and firm, right? It's more difficult to remember synonyms together than to remember them separately. Because of something, and this is what you were talking about before, it's called interference. So your brain puts words in categories, right? In categories. So, dog goes in the animal category, and car goes in the machines category, and we have these categories. But if I learn 10 words in one category, they're all like fighting, right? My brain is fighting to remember them. But if I learn 10 words in different categories, but with some type of connection, that's where you have success. So, in a lot of workbooks, they have a little box with a list of synonyms. This is really bad. You should have a box with kind of some connecting ideas. Like the company is losing money, and also that idea connects to the idea of, I don't know, maybe the economy in general going down. Okay, so I showed you that you don't need a big vocabulary to work in business or to do anything in English. You don't need a big vocabulary. And I'm really interested in this idea of something called universals. Okay? So in this work, they proved that all humans have a lot of universal feelings and emotions and desires and needs and wants. And these universals are actually really easy to learn. And using only about 40 of these universals, we can basically talk about anything. So for example, this is what they look like. We have things like you, me, somebody, this, that, live and die, can, maybe. So this is actually a chart of these non-semantic universals. And so with these ideas, I can communicate anything in business, in personal life. So maybe, an idea for you is to, you could say, right, this month we're going to focus on these ideas. It's going to be about seeing and hearing and thinking. And you work on seeing and hearing and thinking, connecting it to technology or business or whatever, or tourism, right? Yeah. So this could be. I'm trying to say that if you have a good foundation with really simple building blocks, okay, then you can do a lot. Like, you don't need to be memorizing really big words and really complicated structures like third conditional and past perfect. You really have these simple building blocks that you repeat a lot, because fluency isn't about bigness. Fluency is about repetition of smallness, right? So if you take these and you repeat them a lot, then your students will have a really high ability. Maybe not a wide ability, but like useful. Really, really useful. Okay. Final section of the presentation. So our job as teachers is not to teach the content. It's not to teach structures and specific words and things like this. Our job is to teach students how to think. Okay, so for example, it's important to understand that language and thought are not the same thing. Okay, so a lot of people think that, like, when you close your eyes and you have ideas, these ideas exist in English or Spanish, right? Or maybe if I ask you, what's 2 plus 2? When you close your eyes, in Spanish you're going, dos más dos es, right? But here, look, surprise. So this is a study of people with aphasia, so people who have brain damage, right? They have no language. This part of their brain is destroyed. But surprisingly, despite their near total loss of language, despite their near total loss of language, these individuals are able to add and subtract, solve logic problems, think about another person's thoughts, appreciate music, and successfully navigate their environments with no language and with this part of the brain destroyed. Okay? So, and I know this is maybe a little bit philosophical, okay, but language and thought are two different things. So we teach the students how to think, and the language is a different thing. It comes, right? And this is my favorite example of why. So this was from 2001. A group of scientists, they went into schools in Chicago, and they took the students into two groups, okay? And the first group had high-scoring writing assignments, and the other group had low-scoring writing assignments. So low scoring is like this. Look, identify the part of speech of each underlined word below. All 8 parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverb, blah, 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 blah. And you have to circle the thing, right? Okay, typical workbook task. Low scoring. High scoring. Write a paper persuading someone to do something. Pick any topic you feel strongly about. Convince the reader to agree with your belief, and convince the reader to take a specific action on this belief. This has nothing to do with language. This is not about nouns and verbs and adjectives and structures. It's about thinking, about your ideas and how to persuade people, and about thinking. And these are the results. So classrooms with low quality assignments here, classrooms with high quality assignments here. So they're well above the national average. Only from changing this thing. It's about forcing your students to think.